The bargain bride. Eleanor Grace stood barefoot in the damp soil behind her family's cabin, her hands red from scrubbing laundry against the rough stone. The scent of pine and ash clung to her dress, and the morning chill seeped through the fabric. She had lived all her 20 years on this patch of frontier land, tucked between Kentucky's ragged hills and the edge of Shawnee territory. Her world was narrow: chores, silence, and the cold authority of her father, Thomas Grace. Thomas was a proud man, once a respected trapper, now reduced by debt and drought to a bitter shadow. His wife had died young, leaving Eleanor to mother her youngest sister, Sarah, and serve as the household's backbone. There had never been time for dreams, only duty. That morning, Eleanor noticed the way her father avoided her gaze. He sat stiffly on the porch, eyes on the trail that led to town, his shotgun across his lap. A thick silence stretched between them, broken only by the occasional cough from inside the cabin. Sarah had been ill for weeks, her fever refusing to break. Medicine cost money, money they didn't have. Then the sound of hooves. Eleanor rose slowly as the rider came into view. Dust caked the man's boots, and his wide-brimmed hat cast his face in shadow. But she recognized him instantly. Silas Bragg, a man twice her age, rumored to be an outlaw-turned-land baron. Silas owned 3 farms, a string of horses, and a reputation as cruel as a winter wind. He was known for settling debts, not with kindness, but with force. Eleanor's stomach twisted. Her father stood, clearing his throat as the rider dismounted. Silas approached with slow, deliberate steps, his eyes settling on Eleanor with a weight that made her step back. "This her?" Silas asked gruffly. Thomas nodded, not meeting Eleanor's gaze. "No," she whispered. "What's happening?" Thomas avoided her eyes. "It's done, Eleanor. You'll be cared for, properly." "What's done?" Her voice cracked. Silas grinned, revealing yellowed teeth beneath his beard. "Your father's debt. I cleared it. In return, I get a wife. Simple trade." Eleanor's heart pounded. "You sold me." "I secured your future," Thomas snapped. "You'll have food, land, safety. You should be grateful." Grateful. The word felt like poison on her tongue. "I won't go," she whispered, though her legs trembled. Silas stepped closer, close enough she could smell whiskey and tobacco on his breath. "You will. I've got the papers, signed and stamped in town. Preachers waiting at the chapel." The next moments blurred. Her protest fell on deaf ears. Sarah's weak cries from the cabin meant nothing to the men. Her tears were ignored. Her hands were tied, not by rope, but by helplessness. Hours later, in a drafty chapel lit by flickering candlelight, Eleanor became a wife. Not to a man she loved, not by choice, but by bargain. Silas's home sat on a ridge overlooking a field of withered crops. Inside, it smelled of musk and damp wood. The windows were barred. The door creaked like a warning. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. She lay in the hard bed beside a man whose breath reeked of liquor, staring at the ceiling, her heart like a trapped bird. In the silence, she imagined what freedom might feel like, if only she had wings. The days that followed blurred into repetition. Cooking, cleaning, enduring Silas's gruff commands and cold stays. He was not physically cruel, but his presence drained her. He treated her like another possession, like a rifle or a cow. Her opinions were dismissed, her voice irrelevant. Every day, Eleanor walked to the stream a mile from the house to fetch water. It was her only moment of solitude, a pocket of silence beneath the trees. It was there, on the 5th day of her captivity, that she saw him. A man stood across the stream, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing deerskin and feathers in his braid. He held a carved bow, the sunlight glinting off the polished wood. His eyes, dark as the river's stones, met hers with a stillness that unnerved and calmed her all at once. He said nothing, neither did she, but in that moment, something shifted inside her. He nodded once, respectfully, and turned into the trees, vanishing like mist. Eleanor remained rooted in place, heart thudding in her chest. For the first time since her forced wedding, she felt something unexpected. Not hope, exactly, but a flicker of possibility. Stolen glances, The forest became Eleanor's sanctuary. Each morning, she volunteered to fetch water from the stream, not because it was far, but because it offered her a sliver of freedom. Silas never joined her. He trusted that fear alone would keep her obedient. He was right, partly. She did return every time, but not because she wanted to. It was because of him, the Shawnee warrior. She didn't know his name. He appeared without sound, his presence as natural as the wind through the trees. At first, he said nothing, but every day, he was there, sometimes seated on a boulder, sometimes crouched by the water, washing his hands. Always calm, always watching her with gentle curiosity, never intrusion. It was Eleanor who spoke first. "Why do you keep coming here?" she asked one morning, clutching her bucket. He looked at her without smiling, but his eyes weren't cold. "I came long before you did," he replied. "This is not your place, or mine. It belongs to the river." His voice was steady, with a slight accent. Deep, quiet, like thunder in the distance. "I'm Eleanor," she offered, stepping closer. "Eleanor Bragg." The name tasted bitter. He nodded. "Tuketu." The word lingered in the air like a breeze through pine. From then on, the silence between them softened. Each day brought a few more words, a longer glance, a shared story. Eleanor spoke of her sister's illness, of her father's betrayal, of the hollowness inside her chest. Tuketu listened, never interrupting, his face unreadable but never unkind. He told her of his mother, a healer, and his sister, who had died during childbirth. He spoke of honoring the forest, protecting the helpless, and the danger of white men with hungry hands. When she apologized for what her people had done, he only said, "You didn't do it, but you live in the pieces left behind." They never touched, but the space between them grew warmer, charged with something Eleanor couldn't name. It wasn't lust, it was something slower, deeper, a recognition, as if her soul, buried beneath years of obedience and fear, had risen for air. At home, things worsened. Silas began drinking more heavily. He would return at dusk, boots muddy, eyes bloodshot, and complain about the world, about the lazy farmhands, the weather, the ungrateful wife he'd paid good money for. He never struck her, but the threat hovered like a knife on a high shelf. One evening, Silas found the water bucket only half full. "Too busy daydreaming in the woods," he barked. "I slipped on the rocks," Eleanor lied. He stared at her, jaw tight. "You're getting careless." He didn't believe her. She could feel it. He was beginning to watch her more closely. 2 days later, she met Tuketu again. This time, she hesitated before speaking. "I shouldn't be here." "You are," he said simply, his getting suspicious. Tuketu glanced at her hands, scratched, red, worn. "Does he hurt you?" Eleanor swallowed. "Not with fists. But he takes everything. My voice. My choices. He takes the air from the room." Tuketu crouched beside the stream and dipped his hand in. "A woman is not a thing to be owned." Her eyes welled. No one had ever said that aloud. Not her father. Not Silas. Not even the preacher who bound her into this life. "You speak as though I can just leave," she whispered. He looked up at her. "You're not a prisoner unless you believe you are." His words lit something inside her, a fragile flame. That night, Eleanor sat on the porch steps, her apron still damp from washing. The moon hung low and golden above the trees. Silas was inside, snoring into a bottle. She closed her eyes and pictured Tuketu's face. The kindness, the stillness, the strength. She wasn't in love with him, not yet. But she knew now what love was not. It was not coercion. It was not control. It did not suffocate. Somewhere deep in the woods, a wolf howled, and she didn't flinch. She thought instead of what Tuketu had said, "A woman is not a thing to be owned." And for the first time since her forced wedding, Eleanor allowed herself to want. She wanted out. Chains and courage. Eleanor's secret had lived in shadows, between trees and whispers, but secrets were fragile things, and Silas Bragg was a man who trusted nothing that didn't bruise or bleed. She knew something had changed the moment she stepped through the cabin door. Silas sat at the table, elbows planted, his eyes following her like a hunter tracking a deer. His shotgun rested nearby, not pointed, not threatening, but close enough to speak volumes. "You were gone too long," he said flatly. "There was a fallen branch across the path," Eleanor replied. Her voice was even. "Practiced." Silas nodded slowly, almost amused. "You think I don't know?" She froze. "Know what?" "That you've been meeting some redskin savage in the woods." The words struck like a slap, more violent than if he'd used his hands. Eleanor's heart stuttered. "I haven't." He stood so quickly the chair scraped back with a howl. "Don't lie to me, girl. I've seen him. Watch you stare at him like a starving dog at a cooked chicken." Eleanor stepped back, but the wall caught her. "He hasn't touched me. I swear." "Oh, but you wanted him to," Silas hissed. "I see it in your face. That's worse than sin. That's betrayal." Betrayal. The word sat heavy in her chest. Was it betrayal to wish for kindness? For respect? For the right to breathe without permission? Silas loomed over her. "I should have known better. You're kind. Soft in the head, soft everywhere else." Her voice rose, shaky but sharp. "You bought me like livestock, and now you're shocked I don't love you." His eyes flared. For a moment, she thought he might strike her. But he didn't. Instead, he turned away, muttering, "You're coming with me. Tomorrow. West. Far from these woods and that painted mongrel." He was going to take her deeper into isolation, away from Tuketu, from hope, from anyone who might help. That night, Eleanor sat awake in silence, the moon casting a pale path across the wooden floor. Her mind raced. Escape felt like a dream, but staying was a sentence. When she closed her eyes, she saw Tuketu's face, not smiling, but steady, patient, strong. He had never touched her, never asked anything, but in his presence, she had remembered who she was beneath the bruises left by obedience. A choice pressed against her like a blade. Submit to silence, or risk everything for freedom. Tuketu sensed the danger before he heard it. A passing trader, friendly with his people, brought word from a nearby camp. "The outlaw bragger's moving west with his wife in the morning. Looks like she's being dragged." Tuketu's breath stilled. He'd hoped she would come to him in time. Now he knew she wouldn't get the chance. That night, he moved like shadow through the trees, every step quiet and sure. He'd scouted Bragg's homestead days before. He knew the lay of the land. He knew how to slip in unseen. But he also knew, if Eleanor came, it had to be by her will. He wouldn't steal her. He would offer her the one thing she had never been given. A choice. Eleanor stirred when the floor creaked. She sat up in bed, heart thudding, and saw him, Tuketu, silhouetted against the night. She gasped softly, unsure if she was dreaming. "How?" "Quiet," he whispered. "I had to come. He'll take you tomorrow. You know what that means." She nodded. Her voice broke. "I'm scared." "I know. What if I leave and it's worse? What if I fail?" "Then you'll fail free." He didn't move closer, didn't reach for her, just stood there, eyes steady, offering a hand not in possession, but in promise. Eleanor rose. Her hands trembled as she stepped toward him, toward the door, toward the unknown. She paused, one last glance at the cabin, her prison, her grave. Then she stepped outside. Together, they disappeared into the trees, the moonlight scattering across their path like blessings. At dawn, Silas awoke to an empty bed and boot prints in the mud. He screamed, cursed, tore the cabin apart. But it was too late. She was gone. A new fire. The forest stretched endlessly before Eleanor. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of where the path would lead. Tuketu moved ahead of her, swift yet silent, parting the brush with sure hands. Though they'd barely spoken since fleeing Silas's cabin, a calm understanding passed between them. Her legs ached and her lungs burned, but she would not stop. She was moving towards something, not away. By dawn, they reached the edge of the Shawnee village. Smoke curled lazily from the bark-covered lodges, and the scent of wood fire and earth welcomed her like an old lullaby. A few elders emerged, their eyes cautious. Tuketu spoke quietly in his native tongue, gesturing to Eleanor with a respectful nod. No one touched her. No one stared. It was a world apart from Silas's home, where every breath had felt borrowed and every glance like judgment. Hey, even in uncertainty, she felt no malice, only waiting. Over the next days, Eleanor learned to live differently. The women of the village taught her to grind corn, weave reeds into mats, and tend herbs in shaded gardens. Children followed her at a distance at first, curious but shy. She smiled at them, and in time, they smiled back. Tuketu visited often but never lingered too long. He gave her space to rest, to think, to heal. When he did speak, it was with gentle certainty. "You are not weak," he told her once, as she struggled to carry firewood. "You are learning strength with every choice." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Silas had called her foolish, worthless. Tuketu called her strong. The words did not erase her scars, but they began to sow something new in her, self-worth. Weeks passed. No one came searching. Perhaps Silas had given up. Perhaps he feared the land beyond his fences. Or perhaps he'd realized what Tuketu already knew. Eleanor was no longer his to command. One evening, under the pink wash of sunset, Tuketu approached her by the river. He carried a small woven pouch and a calm in his eyes she had come to recognize. "I spoke with the elders," he said. "They do not see you as an outsider now. They see your work, your spirit. They see you." Eleanor looked at him, heart thudding. "And what do you see?" Tuketu stepped closer. "I see a woman with fire in her chest. I see someone who fought her way out of silence. I see the one I would walk beside, if she would have me." Her breath caught. He reached into the pouch and withdrew a necklace, leather-bound, with a single carved stone in the shape of a hawk. "This is not a wedding band," he said. "It is a question. You are free, Eleanor, free to say no." She took the necklace, holding it like something sacred. "I'm not ready to be someone's possession again," she whispered. Tuketu's voice was soft. "Then don't be. Be my partner, my equal." Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from recognition. She wasn't walking into a new prison. She was choosing a future, one forged not in fear, but in freedom. She nodded, smiling. "Yes." The wedding ceremony was quiet, not a spectacle, but a gathering. Around a fire ringed with cedar, Tuketu and Eleanor stood hand in hand. The village elder blessed the union not with vows of ownership, but promises of shared burdens, mutual respect, and peace. Drums echoed gently through the trees, like a heartbeat. As night deepened, Eleanor stood beneath the stars, Tuketu's hand warm in hers. This was love, not bought, not forced, not built on silence. It was something new, something she chose. Months later, Eleanor wrote a letter by firelight. "Dear Sarah, I don't know if Father will let you read this, but I need you to hear it, even if only in your heart. I left not because I hated him, but because I had to find myself. I was dying in that house, in that marriage, in the silence. Now I'm living, really living, and I hope one day you will too. With love, always, Eleanor." She folded the letter and tied it with a thread, leaving it with a trader who passed through the village on his way east. At the riverbank, Eleanor and Tuketu sat side by side as the sun rose. He didn't ask her for anything. He just held her hand as the world awakened before them. Not every wound had healed, but the fire inside her was no longer burning her down. It was lighting the way forward.